Welcome to Trip Talk. Did you know that there's this seed that when ingested makes you hallucinate? It's called the Hawaiian baby wood rose. It's also nicknamed the elephant creeper. I wonder why that is. I read a story about a guy who actually ate the seeds, and he said his first recollection was him flying through some sort of colorful tunnel, somehow seeing everyone that he's known in his life. It was then it seemed like something popped. The next thing he remembers is waking up to what seemed like a stainless steel operating table, with other individuals all around him. What was crazy is he had this subconscious thought that all these other individuals had also eaten the seeds. It basically ended up with the aliens performing telepathic surgery on all the different individuals on the tables, and then the user ended up back in his room. Which ultimately leads to the final question of, what if aliens are using psychedelics to abduct people?
So why is it that the United States is the only country that has confirmed the existence of UFOs? Well, I think it's because of these things right here. These two things right here are the TR-3B anti-gravity spacecrafts that apparently the United States has been working on. Now, these crafts don't officially exist, but the United States is definitely working on this kind of technology. And more importantly, other countries think that the United States is working on this kind of technology. While these things do not explain incidents like the Tic Tac, where we saw this thing move from 0 to 80,000 feet in less than a second, other countries like Russia and China might see this and think that it's US technology. Which is why they're not coming out and being like, yeah, we have no idea what this is, because if they were to do that, they would be showing that they aren't as technologically advanced as us. Which I feel like is why the United States is finally releasing these official reports saying that this is not our stuff, so that countries across the world know that this is something else. But that's just my theory.
Everyone wonders why this conservative Republican president named a five-star general, Eisenhower, said on his last speech to the nation as he left office, "Beware the military-industrial complex."
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
He wasn't talking about his brethren in the military rank and file.
No, he said a technological elite in control of it.
We must also be alert to the equal and opposite danger that public policy could itself become the captive of a scientific, technological elite.
People don't realize that Eisenhower, on his watch, lost control of the technology transfer issue around ET spacecraft. They circled the wagons and cut him out. So that's where I get into the Majority Intelligence Committee, MAJIC. It's pronounced MAGIC, ironically, or not ironically. And that is a blend of both corporate and government programs. And I've met with a number of them who are involved at that level. And they all have this agenda to want to control the world through one calamity after another. And the big one they've been planning is to host sort of an alien threat from outer space. You know, Werner von Braun back in the 70s on his deathbed told a member of my team that there was a long-term agenda to hoax a threat from outer space so that sort of the uber global elite, who are really fascists, wanted to take over the planet and unite humanity, not in love and peace or spiritual development or anything nice, but around a fearsome sort of police state conditions, and that they would go through a number of protocols to do that. First, there would be, of course, the Cold War, which they would wind down, replace it with global terrorism, and then global financial chaos. And then the big one, which is the one that they're working on most, that's been very covert in these unacknowledged special access projects, is this hoaxed alien threat. All of this is basically a dress rehearsal for what's coming. And people need to wake up.
Every once in a while, the president will say, he'll start something and he'll say, oh, I can't tell you about that. So he knows the truth about the aliens, but he can't tell you.
Can you give me a secret sign as to what might be happening? Just you can't say anything, but you can nod or shake your head. That'll do for me. That'll do for me.
He's nodding.
If they weren't threatening the planetary existence, I would hope for their existence, because I think it might wake us all up and grow everybody up and stuff focusing so much on our differences and figuring out what we can do together.
Yeah, maybe somebody's figured it out somewhere.
Oh yeah, totally agree. Destroyed their families. Yep. Destroyed their men. What in the what? Ooh la la! Look, little hips sway. Wait. Warning: satire use, fail use, and I'm not liable for anything that you might actually become or do, or do, or do, or do.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all unemotional.
Satire warning, fail use, Mario. And I'm not responsible for anything you may do or become. Save yourselves, absorb, become, be done with the old. Conspiracies galore. Be safe out there, to a new frontier and beyond.
This is Sparta!
User disconnected from your channel.
Hi, I'm Fox San Antonio's Jessica Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities, Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But we are concerned about trouble and trend of irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
Plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and
False news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these fakely aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think, and this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Massive explosion at gas station in Russia, at least 26 injured. This was today, June 14th, 2021. This looks very familiar, like I've seen this somewhere. June 14th, 2021. Evacuations ordered after Illinois chemical plant explodes. That's 2 in one day. That's very odd. 1 killed in third fire in a week at Iranian petrochemical plant. This was 3 weeks ago. It's getting a little weird now, but not totally weird. Puerto Rico power outage blamed on explosion. This was a week ago. Okay, now it's getting really weird. Queensland power plant explosion causes mass outages across state. Also 3 weeks ago. This just seems like too many to be a coincidence to all happen in 2 months. And these were just the handful I could pull up because there have been more. Not to mention all the hackings we've had, everything that's happened since the first of the year.
Well, this is very interesting. Why don't we go take a look at what Bill C-36 is? Bill C-36 would allow a person to appear before a provincial court with the Attorney General's consent if the person fears that another will commit an offense motivated by bias, prejudice, or hate based on race, national or ethnic origin, language, color, religion, sex, age, mental or physical disability, sexual orientation, gender identity, or expression, or any similar factor. So basically, if I hurt your feelings, it's hate speech. But of course, our freedom's fine, right? That's what y'all keep saying. That's what I keep hearing. It's time for you to wake up.
They don't want you to be proud about your ways. They want a mixed ways because that's anything goes, right? They want to actually have what they had back in the day, time after time after time, cultural enrichment to dumb down, to make things more acceptable. And I don't like that. I like to have my own culture, my own community, and that's it. I ain't gonna say no more about it right now. Not that I'm allowed to on YouTube anyways, but Brightian, yeah, I'm on Brightian.
Don't go to jail. What's wrong? Stop. Talk to me. Chill out. Talk to me. What's wrong? It's all bad, bro. No. It's all bad. It's all bad. It's fucked up. See that? Yeah, it's all bad. Look at it. I don't know if it's about to cause you what. Hey. She's fucked up. Dude, I don't... You're gonna have...
Yesterday, I don't know what was going on. His eyes were popping out of his head, and he talked in the most bizarre manner, kind of like it was some sort of obscene phone call.
I got $1.9 trillion relief so far. They're going to be getting checks in the mail that are consequential this week for childcare. I wrote the bill on the environment.
Oh, how you're poisoning it?
This is an employees bargaining chip now. What's happening?
Is he losing his mind? I mean,
He's
this is really strange stuff, even for Joe Biden. Anyway, last night, the network news, nobody mentioned it. They treated it as though Joe Biden was just speaking normally. That's Joe Biden. We noticed it. Any normal person noticed it. Even the fake news noticed it. But they don't talk about it. Very, very strange.
Look at that. This is why I'm sub to Undead Chronic. You want to see? Undead Chronic. Look at this. This is why I'm still sub to him, even though I don't agree with a lot he says. Ever so more a lot. Because he seemed to not put it together. Look at these demons. Like, they have no integrity. They had no principles. It's like anything goes. What the hell? Look at that shit. They was dancing on an ambulance while people were bleeding out because they got shot.
How do you know when truth is being spoken? It's quite simple. TikTok mutes it, Facebook blocks it, Twitter deletes it, Google hides it, YouTube bans it, your government forbids it, and media brands it as a conspiracy theorist. Understand this. Unless a crime is being committed, all speech is protected under the First Amendment, including quote-unquote hate speech. And speaking of hate speech, who decides what is hate speech and what is not? No one gets to decide what we can or cannot say just because they don't like it or they don't agree with it. Bottom line, I'm hearing rampant talks about a potential media blackout in the not too distant future. This could mean a number of things as it pertains to the flow of information. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my Telegram for more exclusive content. The link is also available in my bio. That way I can stay connected to you guys should this account get banned, etc. And in the meantime, keep holding the line, Patriots. The best is yet to come.
Have you heard of the memory hole? In the book 1984, the government controlled all the information that the people were able to acquire. Agents of the government in 1984 would remove all references from the past and the present to people and events that the government didn't want the people to know about and would shove them down a hole to be destroyed and forgotten forever. Everything I share with you on this channel is something that I've recovered from the memory hole. And the purpose of doing that is so that we might develop that love of liberty that our fathers had, the love of liberty that gave them the courage to risk everything, life, fortune, and sacred honor, to restore that liberty with which they were born. Let's do likewise, yeah?
Hello class, Professor Reasons here. Today's study is in art and political history. This building
is the Great Altar of Zeus at Pergamon, built in Pergamon in the 3rd century, and then the Germans moved it to Berlin in 1910. It wasn't open for visitors until 1930. The Great Altar of Zeus, or the throne of Satan. What? Satan's throne? Totally. In the book of Revelations, Jesus says to the angel of the church in Pergamum, right, I know your works and where you dwell, where Satan's throne is. Now back to Germany, just 3 years after the grand opening of the museum, look who shows up, where his young architect uses the inspiration of the altar in Nuremberg for the rally spot. This place where you've seen him do the real rah-rah rallies. It's not a surprise that that guy would want the seat of Satan for his political hub. But this story doesn't end there. In 2008 for the DNC, Democrats erect an Obama temple. Oh my god, like Obama their god. And guess what they modeled it after? Yep. Oh look, it's the best president ever at the altar of Zeus. The throne of Satan. That's cool. I feel like maybe we haven't heard the last from that guy.
Do you trust the history books? Because I sure don't. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but the one thing I know about history is the winners write history. What if I told you that a massive, highly advanced empire known as Tartaria once existed? This empire is one of the most massive empires in history, however, we're not taught about it in school. But there are some pretty big clues showing that this empire existed, including old world maps, poetry, literature. For example, here's an old world map, I believe it's from like the 18th century, and it shows the Grand Tartarian Empire. Here's a British table of flags from the 18th century, showing the flag of Tartaria. Now the question remains, what happened to this empire? Well, due to some type of cataclysm, this empire was destroyed and taken over, and its history erased from the history books. However, some of their structures remain throughout the world. However, we're told that these buildings and structures were built by the people in the countries. For example, there are similar structures and buildings found throughout the world. However, much of these buildings were destroyed. You also can find similar statues found throughout the world. Here's one example of highly advanced Tartarian architecture. This is the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg. Now, the narrative that we're given is that Peter the Great built it in the 18th century. Now, what I noticed about this building is that it appears to be buried slightly. Apparently, the narrative we're told is that this is just the style of the old world. That when countries would build these grand palaces and structures, they just had windows buried underneath or buildings buried halfway. Here are interesting looking statues found at that museum. But yeah, this is the narrative we're told. Apparently, past cultures just enjoyed building structures halfway underground, hiding windows. Here's a photograph of San Francisco. Now, it doesn't look like they're constructing that building. In fact, it looks like they're excavating it. I mean, just look at the roads around. They're just dirt. Here's an interesting photo of the construction of the Iowa State Capitol. Do you guys notice anything weird about this picture? Well, what I notice is when constructing something, usually people level the ground and they get rid of the trees around. It looks like the building is buried. Here's more examples of similar Tartarian-looking architecture in America, the Capitol. Now, as they're digging down, there doesn't appear to be any foundation, but more building, buried deep below the ground. This is another building in St. Petersburg. Again, why does it seem like the building is buried underground? I guess people just love burying the buildings halfway underground. Here's another building in St. Petersburg. Again, look at the windows. They're like halfway buried. Here's a building in India. Another building in St. Petersburg. I believe this building is in New York. Again, it looks like it's buried underground. And it was just cemented. Here's a zoomed out picture. It's as if we're building on top of a civilization that once existed. Here's the Palace of Versailles in France. Again, it looks Tartarian. Beautiful golden gates, beautiful architecture. Here's the old San Francisco Capitol. Apparently it was destroyed by an earthquake. Yeah, crazy stuff. There's also literature talking about Tartaria. If I were Lord of Tartary, myself and me alone, my bed should be made of ivory, of beaten gold my throne. And in my court should peacocks flaunt, and in my forest tigers haunt, and in my pools great fishes slaunt their fins athwart the sun. How much faith do you have in our history books? Because I don't have that much faith. The one thing I know about history is the winners write history. What if I told you before the 1800s there existed a vast empire? And this empire is known as Tartaria. They had beautiful architecture, free energy, and a bunch of other advanced technologies. However, due to some kind of cataclysm, the world was reset, and history was rewritten. Now, according to many old world maps from the 1800s and older, this empire owned land in what is now Russia, Asia, throughout the Americas, throughout Europe. Now, why in the world would old world maps show Tartaria on the maps? And how come we don't learn about this in our history classes? Also, why are there similar beautiful structures found throughout the world? And why do all of them have some kind of antenna on top of it? Almost as if it's made for wireless free energy. Here's some examples. What if I told you that this is Chicago in the late 1800s? Why does downtown Chicago look like some kind of Roman Empire? Now, the narrative is that this was built for a world fair, and then it was demolished like 6 months later. Makes no sense. Alright, go check out part 2. By the way, there's also literature talking about the Tartarian Empire. Tartary by Walter de la Mare. If I was Lord of Tartary, myself and me alone, my bed should be of ivory, of beaten gold my throne. And in my court should peacocks flaunt, and in my forest tigers haunt, and in my pools great fishes slaunt their fins athwart the sun. Interesting poem for a fake empire. History's a lie.
Once upon a time, there was a civilization that was far superior and more sophisticated than we could ever imagine. This civilization was systematically destroyed and hidden from our history books. This civilization used atmospheric energy to obtain electricity. Having free energy meant that humanity could focus on more serious endeavors, such as creation, creativity, love, and self-development. We see these same geometric, beautiful buildings all over the world, from Africa to China to Japan to South America to Europe. These buildings show us that we lived in an interconnected culture, a culture that understood the deeper levels of existence and how to harness electromagnetic energy. History is a lie and a story built by our oppressors to continue to keep us enslaved, but we will rise again.
Winners give a press conference and how to buy a sailboat as prime minister.
Look like shit. I'm on it.
What's wrong?
All the sex and violence on the screen has gone too far for me. I'm fed up with it. Filmmakers like George Romero